The following podcast is provided by Era Living, innovator in residential retirement options since 1987. And welcome everyone to Answers for Elders Radio Network. And on behalf of Era Living, we are so excited to talk about senior living. Why do seniors make the decision to move into senior living? What is the reasons why? And we want to tell the truth on really, there's no better resource to do that rather than actually going directly to the residents themselves. And for those of you that are on our podcast network, if you go to Era Living, you will meet several of the residents that will kind of tell you their story. And we're very honored today to have a wonderful lady that her reputation precedes her. She's amazing. I've heard all kinds of things about Diane Miller, and she lives at the Gardens at Town Square in Bellevue. Diane, welcome to Answers for Elders.
Thank you.
Diane, I've learned a little bit about you, but you're a Seattle resident, right? You're from this area. Could you before we talk about your step into senior living, would you share a little bit about your life?
Yes, I moved to Seattle when I was in high school. And after college, I married my husband, who had been born and raised in Seattle, very familiar with it. And his parents had been here a long time.
Yeah.
So we've just loved this part of the country, and we've loved Seattle. We had raised our children there and had a wonderful home, but we knew something was coming. It had to change.
Yeah. And I think for those of us that are in our senior years, including me, I'm in the after 65, but I'm not quite 70. But I look at, there's all kinds of decisions that we make now, even now, that I realize it's better to make the decisions early. Absolutely. So that we start having a plan for aging, because I don't want to put my loved ones into a situation where I'm in a situation where I can't make a decision, right. For my own. Yeah. And I think that's something that you really have done quite a bit. And of course, you had some challenges with your husband's health. Was that correct?
Yes, we did. There were signs of dementia coming, very faint signs, but we knew it was coming.
Right.
And I also knew that my eyesight was changing.
Oh, wow.
I would have to give up driving. We lived in a place where we needed a car. I knew that time was coming, and maintenance was getting harder. I did not want my husband climbing up that ladder one more time.
No way, yeah.
Which men tend to do. And so it was time for us to look around.
Yeah.
As you said, while we were in charge, while we made the decisions, and we could make up our minds what to do with our things.
Diane, you're telling me something I think that is music to so many people's ear. Especially, I know that there's a lot of adult children out there that may be concerned about their loved ones, and they're filling themselves with a burden of, wow, mom and dad are, I'm starting to see signs, but I don't know how to help them. And I think what happens is when mom and dad decide, hey, you know what, I'm going to start doing this on my own, there's a huge weight that goes off of the adult child's shoulder, because they have less responsibility as far as the day-to-day care of a loved one. And they can stay the daughter, they can stay the son, they can keep that relationship rather than having to intercede. You obviously have sons. How is your relationship with them?
Well, they were all three of them were living on the east side. And that's why we made the decision to leave Seattle. That bridge and that lake is a big problem for them to go that way. So we came to them. It was just very convenient. One was in Redmond, one in Snoqualmie, one on Mercer Island, and we were right in the middle. So it worked out very well.
Yeah, and I bet that was a while. Yeah, and I bet that was a deciding factor of where you live now, as far as Town Square and Bellevue. And I know the location of that community. Boy, you have all kinds of conveniences around you. You've got the Bellevue Square and all kinds of things. Tell me about, just Bellevue as a whole, living in that community.
Well, one of the things that we that sold us here was that there's a lot of walking area and
Yeah.
it's on the level.
Yep.
And with fading eyesight, you need to be very careful where you walk.
Mm-hmm.
And so being level was important.
Mm-hmm.
And we just had the freedom to come and go. We were
Mm-hmm.
in uh, independent living, so that was our plan to be that way.
Right.
It
That's
didn't
great.
turn out that way, but for 2.5 years that's the way it was. Yes.
Yeah.
And we looked at several places. I think that's good to compare. I think
Absolutely.
one of the things that sold us here probably the most was the friendliness, not just of the staff, which was very friendly and very welcoming, but the residents themselves. And I
Yeah.
think that spreads from the staff being so setting the example, and it
Mm-hmm.
was very easy to meet people. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
people even saw us in the dining room and would come over and say, "You're new,
Yes.
aren't you?"
Yes.
And
Isn't
made us
that
feel,
great?
yes, I knew it. They would take the first step. And they were very, very welcoming and quickly got us connected with people, with activities. And
Mm-hmm.
that's another thing we have enjoyed so much, not being able to drive to keep up what we had been doing before. But once
Sure.
you're here and can't drive, the activities here that are offered are absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. And I know that there's so much that goes into the culture at Air Living. And I think that that really reflects one thing that I've heard consistently through every resident is this feeling of being welcomed, this feeling of being, content and happy in an environment that you really can flourish. But the other thing is you've always got things going on. If you want to participate, you
Mhm.
have that freedom to truly do what you love to do, eat the foods that you love to eat. You don't have to cook. You don't have to do a lot of things. How's that been for you?
Yes, that's right. And I
Yeah,
didn't have to cook.
you don't have to cook. So obviously, there's a lot of seniors that may be looking at a large house or the family home, and they're in a situation where, I've heard the expression, it's too much to deal with to stay, but it's too
It
much
is
to
a
deal
lot.
with to move,
It's
right?
a big deal. It
They're
is.
in this, they're in this transitionary time in their life, where they start to look to the future. What kind of advice, Diane, would you have for us?
Well, I think you need to recognize that it's going to be an emotional time,
Mm-hmm.
but you have a lot of support system, and we had some help, a lot of help from our sons and
Good.
grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
And so breaking up a home you lived in for 50
Mm-hmm.
years with all your stuff and all your junk,
Yeah,
things you had to give up. So we had time to think about that,
sure.
to make some choices. And I think that time of thinking about it was very helpful.
Yeah. And what did you think also about what surprised you the most when you moved into the community?
Let me see. I guess we were completely overwhelmed by the people who came toward us and included us, and were so, they would come up to us while we were eating dinner and introduce themselves, or someone would call and ask us to have dinner, or
Nice.
do you know that this is going on, would you be interested, I'm going, would you like to go with us? And
Oh.
that was very helpful. But we were at that stage living very independently,
Mm-hmm.
had a car, and so
Yep.
we could come and go. At that time, we still owned a property in Eastern Washington that we vacationed in, and we were
Oh,
free to do that.
yep.
We have a summer home on Camino Island, and
Lovely.
I'm getting to go there tonight. But anyway,
Yay.
yes, I've arrived. Thank you. But we're free to do that, to come and
Yeah.
to go and still live the life as much as we could that we had before.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can imagine too, just realizing all the weight of home maintenance and
That's a big
all the
thing.
things that you have to do to take care of a house. How did that change your life?
Well, what gave us a lot more time.
I was going to say, you get to do all kinds of fun things now, right?
Once the pictures were hung, it took us a little while to do that, but
Sure.
once the pictures were hung, we felt free to go.
Yeah. And I can imagine too, just realizing that you don't need the stuff that you thought you did.
Yes.
How was that for you?
It well, we were able to bring more than I think a lot of people are able to do, and so we have an extra bedroom and a bathroom.
Nice.
And so one of the things that we needed was 2 bathrooms.
Uh-huh.
So that was available to us, and we were very happy about that. And
Yeah.
then uh, it just we just had a lot of choices that we could make or not make.
Right.
But I think the thing that I'm so grateful for was the help I received when I found Jack, which I found out later was a stroke. And I just had, within seconds probably, but maybe 2-3 minutes, I had all the help I needed to make big decisions about that, and to in fact, getting him to the hospital so quickly really saved his life, but it also made it much easier on him in the healing process.
Yeah. And then obviously, I do believe he finally passed away not too long ago.
Yes, he did. But
And
he was
I was going to say, how's that been for you now that you have a community around you through that time?
I am just surrounded by people who have gone through this experience themselves. And of course, women especially who have been widowed, we're in the majority actually. And so they just gathered around in such a big support and understand what's going on and can share and be helpful. And I feel I can help someone else do that too.
Sure.
One of the things that was very important to me was the Bible study that was here, started a long time ago by a Bible teacher who had time to be with her mother-in-law who was here.
Oh, lovely.
So I've been involved in continuing that, and that's been a wonderful support.
Good
And
for
also
you.
other people coming too.
Yeah. And just to have a community where you can continue to thrive and have positive experiences in your life. And sure, you have the the moments that you miss him, and through a lot of, and then I think about the pandemic of what he passed away around that time, and so that probably added even more on you, and luckily you had a community that took care of you.
But the joy in that, and I really am thankful for it, was because I had a home in the building, I could see him. And
yes,
so I had access to him, whereas if I had lived elsewhere, it wouldn't have worked.
That's true. That's very true. And there's just so much more in a lifestyle that when you look at it, if you were sitting there alone watching TV, really, especially if you can't drive, you're in a situation where you really don't have a lot of options unless you're dependent on other types of things, right? But this is what's so great, is you have so much around you. So it's been such a delight to meet you, Diane. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Well, I'll be glad to.
Well, thank you again.
All right.
And for each and every one of you, Diane lives at the Gardens at Town Square, an Era Living property, and you can learn more about it at eraliving.com. Era Living is locally owned and operates 8 premier retirement communities in Seattle, Renton, Mercer Island, Bellevue, and Issaquah. From vibrant, independent living to compassionate assisted living to secure memory care, Era Living respects and honors older adults by enhancing the quality of their lives. Learn more at eraliving.com.